The emperor's new clothes. In a city where everything had to look neat and shiny, there lived an emperor who loved his clothes more than anything else. He did not just like them. Every morning began the same way. The emperor opened the large doors of his wardrobe and stood there for a long while. He looked at the fabrics, the colors, the buttons, and the fine stitches. He touched the sleeves and smoothed the collars. Which one today, he would ask himself. While other emperors worried about roads, gardens, or celebrations, this emperor cared most about how he looked. When he walked outside, he wanted everyone to notice him. When people stared with admiration, he felt proud and satisfied. Everyone in the palace knew this. Servants nodded politely when the emperor tried on a new robe. Courtiers smiled and agreed when he asked if a color suited him. Advisors praised his appearance carefully, choosing their words with care. No one wanted to upset him. The emperor loved praise almost as much as he loved his clothes. One day, two strangers arrived in the city. They did not look like ordinary merchants. They walked confidently, spoke smoothly, and carried large suitcases. People noticed them right away. Soon, whispers spread through the streets. They make special clothes, people said. The rumor grew larger with every telling. By the time it reached the palace, it sounded mysterious and exciting. When the emperor heard the news, his eyes lit up. Special clothes? He said. Clothes not everyone can see? In his mind, he already saw himself wearing the most wonderful outfit the world had ever known. That, he decided, is exactly what I need. And that was where the real story began. The two strangers were invited to the palace that very same day. They walked into the great halls as if they belonged there. They looked around with interest, admiring the high ceilings, the decorated walls, and the shining floors. The emperor welcomed them warmly. I hear you make remarkable clothes, he said. The strangers bowed slightly and smiled. We do, said one of them. The courtiers exchanged uncertain glances. But no one spoke. The emperor, however, was delighted. Wonderful, he exclaimed. Make me such clothes at once. Without hesitation, he ordered that the finest room in the palace be prepared for them. Tables were brought in. Chairs were set, scissors, needles, and thread were laid out carefully. The two weavers thanked him politely. The clothes will be ready soon, they promised. Once alone, the strangers opened their suitcases. They moved their hands as if measuring. They whispered to one another. They cut the air with scissors that snipped nothing at all. From the hallway, it looked like hard work. Inside the room, there was nothing. Meanwhile, curiosity spread through the palace. Everyone wanted to see the clothes. That thought made people uneasy. The emperor could not stop thinking about them either. Each hour felt longer than the last. His excitement grew, but so did his impatience. At last, he decided it was time to check. Not himself. He sent his most trusted advisor, the man who always knew what was happening and never made mistakes. The advisor entered the workroom. He looked around carefully. There were tables, but there was no cloth, no fabric. His eyes rested on the empty space where the garments should have been. For a moment, he stood still. The room was silent. The two weavers watched him closely. The advisor felt his heart beat faster. What if only I can't see it, he thought. He did not want to seem foolish. So he smiled. He praised the colors. The weavers nodded happily. When the advisor left the room, his hands were shaking slightly. He hurried back to the emperor. They are incredible, he said. Truly wonderful. The emperor smiled. Soon, others were sent to look, each returned with glowing words and careful smiles, though inside they felt the same confusion. And the two weavers continued their work, calm and confident. The day of the grand procession was coming closer, and no one dared to say what they truly saw. The days passed, and the palace grew more restless. Everywhere people whispered. In corridors, behind doors, near windows, the same question returned again and again. Have you seen the clothes? The room where the weavers worked stayed closed. From time to time, servants passed by and saw moving hands, heard soft voices, and the sound of scissors cutting through the air. It all looked very serious. The emperor thought of nothing else. In the morning, he still opened his wardrobe, but his eyes slid past the old robes. None of them felt right anymore. They were too ordinary. too visible. These new clothes, he said to himself, will be different. But sometimes when he was alone, a small worry crept in. What if I don't see them? He wondered. He pushed the thought away quickly. I am the emperor, he told himself. Of course I will see them. Still, he sent more people to check. A young courtier went next, then an older one, then a lady from the court. Each returned smiling. They are beautiful, they said. Each also felt the same quiet doubt, but none spoke of it. The weavers continued calmly. They asked for gold thread, silver thread, and fine silk. All was given to them. They placed the materials carefully into their suitcases and nodded with satisfaction. Inside the room, nothing changed. At last, the emperor could wait no longer. I will go myself, he decided. The courtiers froze. But, Your Majesty, one began. I want to see them, the emperor said firmly. So one morning, the emperor walked down the corridor toward the workroom. His steps were slow, measured. The closer he came, the louder his heart seemed to beat. The door opened. The two weavers bowed deeply. Welcome, they said together. The emperor looked around. He saw tables, nothing else. For a moment, the room felt very large and very quiet. The emperor's breath caught. I see nothing, his mind whispered. Fear rose inside him like cold water. What if I cannot see the clothes? He straightened his back. He smiled. They are remarkable, he said slowly. The weavers beamed. Just as we promised, one said. The emperor nodded. Yes, he agreed, just as promised. When he left the room, his smile stayed fixed, but his thoughts raced. Everything is fine, he told himself. Everything is fine. The day of the procession arrived. The city woke early. Windows were decorated, streets filled with people. Children sat on shoulders, eager to see. In the palace, servants hurried back and forth. Trumpets were polished. Horses were brushed. Courtiers lined up in their finest clothes. In the workroom, the emperor stood before the weavers. It is time, he said. The weavers nodded and began to dress him. They lifted invisible fabric. They smoothed invisible sleeves. They adjusted an invisible cloak. The emperor stood still. He felt cool air on his skin, but he did not move. Does it fit well? He asked. Perfectly, said the weavers. The emperor turned toward the mirror. He saw himself, exactly as before. For a moment, his face tightened. Then he nodded. Excellent, he said. The courtiers gasped in admiration. How light it looks, one said. The emperor lifted his chin. Yes, he said, very elegant. The palace doors opened. Music began to play. The emperor stepped outside. The crowd fell silent. People stared. They leaned forward. Some nodded quickly. No one wanted to be the first. The procession began to move. The emperor walked proudly down the street. The music played loudly. Flags waved. Children pointed. Adults whispered. Isn't it amazing? Someone murmured. The emperor walked on, holding himself tall. Inside, his thoughts were loud. They see it, he told himself. They must. But the whispers sounded different now. Slower. Then, among the crowd, a child spoke. The voice was clear, simple, honest. The sound traveled like a small bell through the street. The people froze. Some laughed nervously. The emperor felt the words reach him, not as sound, but as truth. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. The music faltered. Then it played again. The emperor kept walking. He did not stop. He did not look back. The procession ended. The crowd slowly drifted away. People spoke in low voices, some thoughtful, some quiet. The emperor returned to the palace. The great halls felt different now. Not bright, not shining, just empty. He sat alone and looked at his wardrobe. All his clothes were there. Neat, visible, silent. And somewhere in the city, children went on playing. The weavers were gone, and the story was not over yet. When the emperor returned to the palace after the procession, he did not go straight to his wardrobe. He walked slowly through the halls, listening to his own footsteps, which sounded different now, heavier than before. The palace was quiet, not empty, but thoughtful. At last, the emperor sat down on a long bench near the window and looked outside at the city. People were walking as usual. Some talked, some laughed. Some children ran past each other, playing as if nothing special had happened. But the emperor knew something had changed. He closed his eyes for a moment and heard the child's voice again, clear, calm, and simple. Not loud. He isn't wearing anything. The emperor opened his eyes. I heard you, he said softly, though no one was there. I heard you very clearly. That evening, the advisors gathered, unsure of what to say. They stood quietly, waiting for instructions, glancing at one another. Finally, the emperor spoke. You may leave, he said calmly. The advisors bowed and went away, surprised but relieved. The emperor stayed alone. He stood up and walked to his wardrobe. He opened the door slowly, as he had done every morning for years. Inside were all his clothes, bright, heavy, soft, shining. He touched one robe, then another. So many, he said quietly. And yet today none of them helped me. He closed the wardrobe. The next morning, the palace woke as usual, but something felt different. Servants noticed it right away. The emperor came out wearing simple clothes, clean, well-made, but not grand. People looked at him in surprise. One servant whispered, Is that all? The emperor heard him and smiled gently. Yes, he said, that is all. Later that day, he walked through the city again, not in a procession, no music, no banners, just walking. People noticed him. Some bowed. A child stood near a fountain, watching him carefully. The emperor stopped. Good morning, he said. The child looked up a little unsure. Good morning, the child replied. The emperor crouched down so they were at the same height. You said something very important yesterday, the emperor said slowly. The child shifted from one foot to the other. I only said what I saw, the child answered. The emperor nodded. That is exactly why it mattered, he said. The child thought about this, then smiled. The emperor stood and continued walking. From that day on, the palace changed, not suddenly, but steadily. The emperor still cared about how he looked, but he cared more about how he listened. When people spoke, he waited. When someone disagreed, he did not turn away. He asked questions. What do you think? The city noticed. People spoke more freely, laughter returned, lighter than before. Children told the story again and again, not as a joke, but as something important. There was an emperor, they said, who learned that seeing is not the same as understanding. And the emperor himself sometimes smiled when he heard it, because now he knew something he had not known before, that the most important things are not always shiny. And so the city went on, not perfect, not silent, but real. And that, at last, was enough.